the entrepreneur, especially once they become profitable, they're going to be more inclined to say, you know what, they'll just take the money that they've made from profits and they'll put it right back in the business. And they never really focus on the personal side as well. And what that ends up creating is a situation where when they're scaling the business or they're looking to grow the company, or perhaps they're even thinking about what if they wanted to exit the company, there is no plan. Everything is in the business and the business is it.
Well, hey, and welcome back to the Amanda Kaufman Show. And in this episode, I am so delighted to introduce you to one of my longtime high performance friends. Eunicia Peret is here with her wealth strategy tidbits. I'm so excited about this. And dear listener, Eunicia and I go way back. Like we met in like Utah, 2018, and we've just stayed in touch for years. And I've always been really impressed with how Eunicia shows up. She is such a genius. She's the founder of Excelstra, and she does wealth strategies. She helps high performers and high performing companies not just make money. There are so many people that promise to make money. She helps people to be so much smarter with how they manage their wealth by having them connected into the correct strategies. And I'm going to mess it up if I speak anymore. So I'm going to welcome Eunicia to the show. Eunicia, why don't you take 30 seconds and say hello and let us know what your genius
Thank you,
is.
Amanda, and to you as you're listening. I'm Eunicia Peret. I don't recognize the person Amanda's talking about. However, I think that there might be something there. I am a wealth strategist. I grew up in strategy consulting. And so the depth of expertise that I've had from my prior world always been focused on the areas of finance has given me a very unique perspective into not just how do we grow wealth, but more importantly, what are the things that people are missing out on when it comes to how they're managing their wealth currently. Because what we found is that if we focus on the areas that nobody else is addressing because maybe they're too hard, or maybe they don't know, or maybe they're too intricate because they cross multiple industries, financially speaking, then we truly have hit the jackpot and are able to deliver that value right back to our clients. And that's me.
That's amazing. And, I always really appreciated and appreciate you, Eunicia, because you are very straightforward when you talk strategy. I think there's a lot of people who, when they say the word strategy, they're kind of disguising that they don't know the details. And that's not you. You are somebody who is incredibly thorough. And I've always really appreciated it. Speaking as an entrepreneur, a lot of entrepreneurs start from a place where they have very little financial literacy, very little financial education. And I'm one of them. I had to learn a lot, and I'm still learning every single day. What would you say is the top thing you see higher performing entrepreneurs miss when it comes to wealth strategy? Like what is that biggest missing piece do you see most often?
There are actually two pieces, if I could go into them, and they sit
Sure.
in some of those different categories that I was mentioning about earlier. Is the first component, which is a very, very slippery slope, is the entrepreneur, especially once they become profitable, they're going to be more inclined to say, you know what, they'll just take the money that they've made from profits and they'll put it right back in the business. And they never really focus on the personal side as well. And what that ends up creating is a situation where when they're scaling the business or they're looking to grow the company, or perhaps they're even thinking about what if they wanted to exit the company, there is no plan. Everything is in the business and the business is it. And a time such as during COVID was very eye-opening for a lot of individuals and business owners that had to either close doors, or even those in the medical field, insurance companies completely changing how they paid. It rendered a lot of individuals, it put them right back to the 2008, 2009 timeframe, and they went right back to zero in most cases. So that's a big thing, is the individuals do not focus on truly having a plan that transcends between the business and the personal as well, to give them that level of confidence of, you know what, if the bottom falls out, they'll be okay. The other thing that we see a lot of entrepreneurs struggling with is this catch-22 of minimizing their tax exposure, because as they continue to grow, they could deduct a lot of expenses. They're seeding the business, they're growing the business. And now, especially as they're turning profitable, they have truly outgrown the support that has been provided to them, not because their financial team is not amazing. They're not amazing human beings. They do not truly have the strategies that bypass there are no more deductions to take advantage of. And so now they're looking for how else could they minimize their taxes. And one of the things that we see there's a huge dichotomy. Either individuals pay because they don't know that they have a different option, or they do the same. They go right back to what we discussed in the first part. They invest back into the business because in their mind, they're thinking, if I invest back in the business, it's considered a cost. It comes off the taxes and it'll be okay. What they don't know is that just investing back into the business may not necessarily deliver the best results. And so because of that, one of the things that we see as a prime example is individuals that might have grown a company to the tune of $20-30 million. And guess what? They're cash strapped. Meaning they're looking at huge tax burden. They cannot even really withstand being able to do anything to minimize that because they've invested so much money into the company. There is not any cash to really play with. So just because the revenue is there does not necessarily translate into great opportunities, especially when it comes to how do we minimize the impact that tax exposure could potentially cause on their business.
Oh my gosh. So powerful. And I remember starting this business like a decade ago, and I was like, okay, if I can figure out how to make a sale, my life will change. And it did, right? Like it did. It really did to launch the business. But what you're saying is like so resonant. And, dear listener, I don't keep it a secret that in my own journey, I've learned the hard way some of these things that Eunicia, even being friends with Eunicia, I still stumbled into some of these things because I simply just didn't know. Right. And I didn't know to ask. And I would say, embarrassed. Right. Because I think one of the things about, money is that you're supposed to be super crazy good at it. But no one really wants to talk to you about it. And that's why you have to take a lot of responsibility. And that's exactly what I did, to like reach out and ask the questions and, shift the team, financially speaking, from being focused on, okay, compliance with making sure that you've got everything filed on time, to like, no, strategies where you get the best result by allocating your resources in better ways so that you get, better outcomes, but that it's matched to where you actually are with your business, which is very unique. I think that's another reason why a lot of entrepreneurs don't get the kind of help that they could, is they don't realize that their situation is unique and they do need to talk to a professional. What would you say to someone? Go ahead. I was just about to ask, like, what would you say to someone who is like maybe thinking about engaging with experts on strategic wealth building, but maybe they might be counting themselves out? Because I know that was definitely me in the camp. I was always saying like, well, I haven't made enough this year. I didn't make enough profit this year. And, from speaking to you offline, I'm like, probably should have called Eunicia like a lot sooner. So what would you tell that person who's feeling like they might not be ready or qualified to start looking at their finances through a strategic lens? Maybe they have debt, or maybe they have some ideas about like, I don't make enough money yet. What would you say to that person?
I would say you've probably, if you're in that camp, the people that you've been surrounded with have probably, right, wrong, or indifferent, beaten you into this submission of you're not there yet. And what I would press on to say is, if that thought is going through your mind, you are not just ready. If you do not take action, there is absolutely no way that you're going to be able to elevate from where you're at to the next level. And Amanda, you mentioned something that's very, very key earlier. A lot of people feel that maybe they're just not good enough. They don't have enough. They're afraid and they're embarrassed to reach out. That was me too. When I left my corporate job and all of a sudden there was no huge salary, I felt this tiny as a human being because my worth was somehow tied to that money. And what I found was that the faster I was able to ask questions. Now, of course, we built our business on what are things that don't work. However, on a personal note, the faster I was asking questions of, okay, this doesn't feel good. I don't feel comfortable talking even for myself with my bookkeeper or my CPA. Oh my gosh, they're going to see that I'm not perfect. I'm no longer making the kind of money that I was making in my super amazing corporate job. The reality was that the earlier you can engage experts and the earlier you can ask those tough questions, the better off you're going to be. Now, it goes back to the team. If you're feeling that way, chances are you're not in a position where you can actually talk to your team about it, because if they knew different, you would have known different. And this is where it's upon you to say, hey, you heard Eunicia, let's chat. Or ask Amanda oh my gosh, where should I start? Who should I talk to? Ask someone and have those tough conversations. Ask your questions. And if the questions still leave you high and dry or still leave you with kind of your stomach going, I don't think we're on the right path, then continue on and don't give up until you have that awareness of, okay, finally, I feel like I'm getting something new.
I love that. And that's such good advice. People will take forever to select a new pair of shoes or, to make a coffee order. And they're really considering and deliberating that decision. But sometimes, the anxiety, I guess, around like the wealth makes us sort of feel like you're isolated, you're alone and all those kinds of things. And money loves time. Like if you can have a good strategy and the time to let that strategy unfold, and you're making deliberate decisions today for your better future, like it's all better. And by the way, I would say the same thing about marketing. I would say the same thing about sales skills and delivery skills. Like the sooner you recognize that if you knew better, you would do better. And that asking questions, which honestly, like, I don't know about you, but for me, that's 80% of it. Like if I can just work up the nerve to like, okay, I'm going to ask the dumb question, like that I'm judging as dumb. And it turns out it's not a dumb question. It's an important question. I love what you said about like, if you're not feeling in your jellies that you're getting a good, you didn't say jellies, that's my word. If you're not feeling good about the answer that you're getting from the person, give yourself that permission you give yourself when you're choosing different shoes to check in with a different expert. And that was my experience as well, is that I did need to talk to a few different people, which meant that it felt like I was ripping the Band-Aid off a few times. But you know what? It was about half as sucky the second time. And then it was half as sucky again the third time, because I realized the clarity of my question, and I was better able to listen to my gut with who I ultimately chose to engage with at that time. And I'm going to add to that, it's okay to level up. It's okay to level up your expertise as you go too.
As a matter of fact, I have a perfect example of how asking those questions will actually lead you to understand that the answers you've been getting, because there's that dichotomy of, do you know that you've got the right answer? Do you know you're on the right path? How do you know? For example, talking about tax strategies, I was recently at a medical conference, and one of the CPA firms that were there, they're talking about, tax strategy this and tax strategy that. And the person that was next to me, who very keenly, she's a fractional CFO, she very keenly understands what we do. She looked at me and she said, it just tickles me to no end when I hear those CPAs companies talk about tax strategies, when all they're really talking about is deductions and things that all of these people could find on Google. Whereas when you say tax strategy, it truly means these are the things that the ultra wealthy do that 99.999% of the population doesn't have access to. And yet people think that just because somebody uses the word strategy or whatever the word is, that automatically they're at the next level. Well, ask the question, because when you start asking the question and you start asking, well, tell me more about what are some of the strategies that you talk about, you will very quickly realize that those strategies are the exact same things that, yes, they are Googleable. You can find them out there. And then you will know that, okay, there's something else out there that I'm not getting. Where do I know? Who do I need to talk to get to the next level? And that's key.
That's so key. You want extraordinary outcomes, you got to do a little extra, and you got to look at it a little bit differently. Eunicia, what is the best way for people to like connect with you, to follow up with you, to hear your latest wisdoms? What's the best way to do that?
The best way to do that is via social media. Best way is on LinkedIn. We're very present there. Obviously, we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners, and a lot of executives. So if you're on LinkedIn, if you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn. If you're there, look us up, send us a DM. When the show airs, let us know what are some of the things maybe that you would be interested on. We can dive into more of the specifics. And if you DM on LinkedIn, if you DM me the word strategy, we will send you a free gift that will help you elevate your mindset and really how you should be thinking about your wealth, tax optimization, all the things that you should be thinking about that frankly nobody's talking about. And of course, you can easily find me by just looking up my name, Eunicia Peret, which will be in the show notes and should be very easy.
Amazing. And yes, dear listener, we're going to make sure that we have Eunicia's full details in the show notes. You should definitely follow her, definitely connect. She's got some very exciting things that are coming out really soon and maybe have already been out depending on when you listen to this. So definitely go check it out. Eunicia, thank you so much for being here.
It was a pleasure, Amanda, and thank you to all of the listeners. Thank you for listening and tuning in, and make sure that you stay connected with Amanda. She's got some unbelievable things coming in and coming out all the time.
I love that. And you know what, listener, if you heard something that was like a powerful nugget, make sure you grab the link to this episode and forward it to 2 or 3 of your friends. We need to have more open conversations about being financially competent and like strategic and not just relying on tax time and hope. Hope is just not a strategy. So make sure you grab that link and share it with a few people. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button. You know, there's a lot of listeners that listen every single week, but they don't hit that subscribe button. It helps us to know whether you really want to hear more of what we're doing. And finally, if you've got like 2 minutes, a friendly rating always does a lovely thing. You know, people have to decide where they're going to spend their precious time, and you taking the time to leave an honest review of the show makes all the difference. So until next time, we will see you on the Amanda Kaufman Show. And until then, make sure you do what matters.